Slovakia about that. Had to help hold G with something. It was kind of important. But back to part two of this sit down lesson. I want to continue on with it. Slovakia for the part one of the video had to cut short, had to do something. Now this is continuing on part two of the sit down lesson and the update of wars and rumors of wars and nations, charades against nations, and commotions of wars as well too. And it says several Western military attached has requested access to the Serbian military bases in Raska and Novi Pazar over the weekend, but Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić told reporters he declines to give them permission. I didn't allow. If we decide to put on some show, then they can see what we have, he said while attending the joint police and military drills dubbed North Wind 2022 in eastern Serbia. NATO occupied Kosovo in 1999 after a 78-day air war against Serbia. The province utterly declared independence in 2008 and has been recognized by the United States and its allies, but not by half the world, including Belgrade, Russia, China, and several EU member countries. Vučić is currently pursuing the policy of military neutrality and not opposing sanctions against Russia while attempting to join the EU. So as you see right here, Serbian military launches drills near Kosovo as some type of deadline looms, a type of document dispute. But it goes to show you, rumors of wars, nations rising against nations, and commotions of wars, proxy wars, and the clashes between the nations as well too, as the nations continue to do these military exercise drills, training drills, simulation style attack drills, ground troop training, missile launch trainings, and etc. And this is another article as well too about to bring out. And this was recently, as I mentioned in my previous videos, with the cross-border attacks between Syria and Israel, of Israeli aggression towards the target areas of Syria, a cross-border conflict, which is an ongoing clashes between the two different nations. And this is a news article on August the 31st, 2022 from RT.com as well too. Alternative world news around the world. And it reads, Israel attacks Aleppo, Syria, international airport, Syrian media reports. Missiles also target the capital, the state news agency Sana claims, citing military sources. Syrian air defense intercept a number of Israeli missiles on Wednesday evening, but several broke through and damaged the international airport in Aleppo. The Syrian state news media agency Sana has reported that the outlet said it was citing claims for military sources at around 8 o'clock this evening. It says the Israeli target Aleppo International with a missile strike with caused material damage is quite one as saying. Explosions were also recorded in Damascus, while eye-watching reports speaking of damage to residential areas and of possible victims. There were no official confirmation yet. However, according to one report, at least 3 missiles struck Aleppo airport runway, taking it out of service until further notice. Much of Syrian air traffic was redirected through Aleppo after a similar strike on June, destroying the runways at Damascus International Airport. Israeli satellite photos shows significant damage to the airport. Syrian officials informed Russia they are repairing the damage. Runways may take significant time. Israel has reportedly targeted Syria with missiles, usually fired from Lebanese airspace or the occupied Golan Heights, wary of air defense systems provided by Russia to Damascus. On the rare occasion that Israel has acknowledged the attacks, its government and it was exercised primitive self-defense against the Iranian presence in the neighboring country. Tehran has offered military aid to Damascus in recent years against both the Islamic State, formerly known as You Know What. It says the terrorists and other radical You Know What. Israeli claims Iran is using civilian flights to Syria to smuggle weapons and missile ports to Hezbollah as a Shiite military in Lebanon. Syria, Russia, and Turkey have repeatedly protested Israeli strikes and calling on West Jerusalem to stop violating Syrian sovereignty, apparently to no effect. So yeah, hey. Yeah. With a range of drives, you can take a Sunday stroll Right. Oh, okay. Say you got enough of that already as it is. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Salakia for that momentary pause. OG was doing something. But yeah, back to what I was, what I was saying, I read through the article right here. You have the ongoing cross-border clashes, proxy wars, commotions of wars between the nations. As you know, had the Israeli aggression, firing airstrikes in territories what some may believe is occupied by Iranian-backed groups or allies of Iranian-backed groups and other organization factors as well too. So you got a lot of activity going on in the Syrian region, because you got Turkey stationed there, Russia, you know, and you got Syria as well too, and you got Israeli aggression constantly nonstop using airstrikes over there in that region, because they look at Iranian as an adversary and look at them as the bad guys, because Iran and Israel, they don't like each other, they adversaries. So it's gonna be a lot of tension going on in the Middle East. And then I was reading on through the article, I believe it was Russia had made that statement to Israel, was telling stop using airstrike towards the Syrian people, the citizens and the armies and stuff like that, because it's causing to, because they look at it as a bad idea, and it's terrible, because you got citizens that still live there, innocent civilians, men, women, and children, and soldiers there as well too, in those district areas where they supposedly be targeting those sites, which is facilities, which is financed by supposedly by Iranian-backed group that supports Iran, in their organizations or whatever, and they believe Iran is supporting and funding these organization groups that's stationed in Syria, these facilities. That's Israeli aggression using airstrikes over there, and sometimes they mistakenly target innocent soldiers, innocent civilians, men and women, children, like I mentioned before. So you got a lot of tension going on in that region. Then you got Turkey stationed down there. Not too long ago, they had their operation as well too, trying to stop the organization groups, which is the YPG organization groups. Then you got the Kurdish soldiers down there. They clashing with the Turkish soldiers, which they got a military base things down there in Syria, in the Middle East as well too. So it's a lot of tension going on in that region. So expect to see it increase more and more between all these nations is there, with Russia, Turkey, Israel, and people of Syria as well too. So that's what you call commotions of wars, proxy wars, endless wars, rumors of wars, nations rising up against nations, as we start to see it increase now more than ever, even though it's often and common, as we hear it all the time in the news all the time. But it's starting to be more increasingly aggressively, between these nations. Tensions are starting to increase more than ever. And then this is another news article, then I'm gonna close it out. And this one says U.S. is expedite arms shipment to Taiwan. Washington is working on completing an unfilled arms deal with the island. The U.S. Congress is looking to expedite weapon shipments to Taiwan in order to fill a $14 million backlog in arms sales at first. Wow. It seemed like they upped the ante on this. They upped the price on this. Now, at first, when we covered this story, when I did about 2 days ago, at first it was $1.1 billion in arms sales. Now, the Biden administration and U.S. Congress increased the price from $1.1 billion in arms sales now to 14 billion, I meant to say, in arms sales, Slovakia. It says following a 14 billion backlog in arms sales to the self-governing island, according to the House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman George Meeks. In an interview, it says, in an interview with Defense News Public on Tuesday, the New York Democratic said that the U.S. lawmakers are working on bills now to help expedite and reduce the red tape to get defense items that are needed out in a quick fashion, citing unfilled arms shipments to Taiwan as well as to the countries such as Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. And it says senators are now looking to reform the review process for foreign weapons shipments, primarily the part requiring an assessment of whether such deliveries can end up in the wrong hands. Right, just like it makes sense because during those times that the United States was funding all that money over there to the Ukraine, all those billions and millions of dollars on a consistent basis that the United States was doing to aid the Ukrainian soldiers over there in the Russia-Ukraine situation, even though it's increasing, and sometimes those military aids of arms and artillery, it might go into the wrong hand of the wrong groups, and they might use weaponry to destroy it, and that costs a lot of money. So I get what they saying now on that, And I'm gonna read it again for edification's sake. Senators are looking to reform review process for foreign weapon shipments, primarily to requiring an assessment of whether such deliveries can end up in the wrong hands and pose a threat to the U.S. It says posing a big threat to the United security interests and produce that can take over a year. A foreign staff on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Laura Crutch, said Congress is interested in shortening that process while maintaining its integrity. Nothing that we don't want to just throw out everywhere, but the senators need to figure out how we can improve that process. Makes sense. It says the senators is expected to address Taiwan's backload in September, when the Foreign Relations Committee plans to draw up the so-called Taiwan Policy Act. The bill is slated to produce an additional $4.5 billion in military aid to Taipei and also require Department of Defense and State prioritize and expedite foreign military sales for Taiwan and prohibit delays of sales. According to the Defense News, the legislation would also designate Taiwan as a major non-NATO ally and also used to establish a war reserve stockpile for Taiwan that consists primarily of munitions. That stockpile, for which 500 per year, were all allocated through 2025, would be provided immediately in the event of the Chinese attack, right? Because it's going to be a potential. And like I mentioned before, I had stated this again. I was going to, say it again, that I seen an article that caught my eye was saying that, China, if they potentially might attack Taiwan, Taiwan, the president of Taiwan, she made that statement saying, they'll be fully ready. They'll be fully ready if China invades Taiwan. And we definitely seeing that coming, but we don't know when the exact date is going to actually happen. But the most likely scenario that China is definitely going to invade Taiwan. And that's why the president of Taiwan, she made that statement. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna be locked and loaded and fully equipped if in case China invades their island, you know. And it says, meanwhile, China has repeatedly warned the U.S. against arming Taiwan, which Beijing considers to be part of its territory. It says Chinese officials have stated that they will respond decisively in firm measures if Washington continues to provide military to Taipei, which considers to be a blatant violation of the One China policy and other diplomatic agreements between the U.S. and China. So yeah, hey, these wars and rumors of wars are definitely heating up with these nations. As you see, is an increase over there. The tensions increasing over there in the South China Sea, right along with the Taiwan Strait and the Taiwan Island. The tensions between Beijing and Washington, China, and the United States as well too. As you know, the United States is working on a $14 billion military package aid to send the military arms to Taiwan as they get ready and get prepared for a potential showdown with China if they invade their island, as Beijing and China continues to warn the United States they're going to do any much necessary affirmative action, if necessary, if need be, if the United States go on ahead with the plans to send that military aid amount $14 billion and an additional 14.5 as well too, as I was reading on through the article. So yeah, these tensions are definitely stirring up, you know. So with that, I hope this is edifying through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy of Yahweh Yahushua. This is our part 2, continuing of this lesson. Even though part 1 was kind of cut short for about 6 minutes, I believe. 6 minutes and 26 seconds, I believe, for part 1 of the video. And this is continuing, finishing part 2 of this sit-down lesson. And I hope this is edifying for the listeners out there through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy of Yahweh Yahushua. And first and foremost, once again, I would like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Karkadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. Shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And until next time, I will say shalom and a bar.